This is Evelyn Lopez. Welcome to A Little Sustainability in Your Ear, the Earth911.com podcast for the week of April 23rd. I'm joined today by Mitch Ratcliffe, the publisher of Earth911.com, plus Trey Granger, one of our stellar environmental writing team. Mitch, I know you are at our studio in Tacoma, Washington. Trey, where are you talking to us from today?
I am in Phoenix, Arizona.
Excellent. I am in Savannah, Italy, for a legal conference on civility. But through the magic of the internet, we are all connected.
So you're in Savannah, Italy. Tell us about that. And what are you seeing in terms of sustainability and recycling going on over there? Well,
Mitch, it's really interesting. We were in Italy about 10 years ago, and I didn't notice a lot of recycling at that time. But now, just about every store and every street corner will have an option for people to drop in plastic bottles, cans, and paper. In Savannah, which is a very small town in the Italian hill region of Tuscany, it's a town of 103 residents, beautiful old stone streets. Even the little pizza place and the bar will have a spot where you can put in your empty plastic water bottles or any aluminum cans you have. I also noticed when we were driving to Savannah from Rome that Italy has a lot more residential solar panels than I would have expected, and a number of solar farms also.
Well, it sounds like the world is progressing. That's fantastic to hear. When I was at the ISRI conference, the Institute for the Scrap Recycling Industry last week, I talked to a number of people, and they all pointed to the Europeans as having come over and shown American recyclers that it was possible to make money and turn it into a real industry. And it's good to hear that even the smallest towns in Italy are taking up the cause.
Yeah, I've been really impressed.
Well, great.
Well, let's start out with our news segments. The first news item we have, of course, is our Earth Day recap. Earth Day produced lots of mainstream coverage of sustainability and recycling issues. And in fact, Earth911.com was featured on WNBC TV in New York this week, where a home recycler asked how to recycle older VHS and beta tapes. Generally, these are referred to as magnetic media for recycling purposes, but we found a twist. Mitch, can you tell us what happened?
Well, our editor, Haley Shapley, was doing research on where to submit these old VHS and tapes, beta tapes, to have them recycled. And what she found was a place called the Lower East Side Ecology Center. And what they told us is that they're raising their fees. They currently charge $1 per pound of these tapes to possibly $2 or $3 per pound because China has decided to restrict the imports of U.S. waste. We've talked about this on the show before. And one of the notable things that they're resisting importing anymore is rigid plastics, which, of course, these VHS tapes are made from. So this was really interesting. We didn't expect to find this, and I also saw this last week at the ISRI conference. There's a lot of activity, both in terms of companies deciding to invest in new recycling centers here in the States because it no longer can be exported to China, and also very widespread concern about whether or not they would be able to sell their material in the future because of the tariffs, the putative trade war that we're in with China right now. So the combination of these two things has really changed the face of the industry, and it was the constant talk of the event. Trey, you've done a lot of work on this over the years. So what do you think the U.S. is going to be able to do to respond to this limited capacity for rigid plastics recycling?
I think the biggest thing is we need to figure out a market for this material that is outside of making new rigid plastics from it. Plastic's a very unique material in the sense that for aluminum cans or glass bottles, most of the material recycled in those streams ends up going back into packaging. For plastic, that's not necessarily the case. If you have a plastic bottle, in some cases it might become a new bottle, but it's more likely to become the lining for a fleece jacket or other attributes that make value for that material. In the case of the rigid plastics, we really haven't identified, at least in the United States, that market for where that material can go. And that's holding up the challenge of accepting this material domestically.
So we could use this for everything from insulation to tablecloths, right? This is something that it's a new material that we can use in a lot of flexible, and I mean that both literally and in the rhetorical sense or the figurative sense, that you can use it a lot of different ways, and it's pliable. So is it a business opportunity, a charitable opportunity, or are we just going to be stuck without Chinese recyclers who took this stuff off our hands before?
I think there's definitely a business opportunity for whichever company can figure out the best and most inexpensive use for this rigid plastic resin.
Great. Well, it was a really fascinating conversation in Las Vegas at the ISRI conference as well, because they're talking about how to break down different types of plastic into their component parts and create different plastics rather than having to be limited to what you took in as a recycler. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. So Evelyn, what's next?
Well, next up, we're talking about recycling clothes hangers. Earth 911 has a really interesting story about recycled and recyclable clothes hangers being used in retail clothing stores. So let's call this segment The Mystery of Why There Aren't More Green Clothes Hangers. And if you'd like to read the story by Trey Granger, it's available on the site in the Living and Wellbeing section. Look for clothes hangers. So I'll start with you, Trey. Trey, which retailers are taking the lead in using more sustainable materials in their stores?
So the one that's the most common right now you'll find is Gap. Gap is actually working with a company called Ditto Hangers that makes hangers from paper instead of metal or plastic. And so those hangers are fully recyclable within a curbside bin. If you take that hanger home with you, you can put it right in your curbside bin when you're done with it. You also have companies like Macy's and Bloomingdale's that are using plastic hangers, but they're made of recycled content. So they've found a way to reduce the footprint of manufacturing those hangers in the initial stages.
Mm-hmm. But for those plastic hangers, Trey, let's say I buy something and bring them home, am I able to recycle them or get rid of them in some way, or does it sort of stop there?
Most curbside programs would not accept hangers just because of the shape. They're kind of jointed and don't fit well in the truck when transported. So it's a very similar material to the rigid plastic. It's just the complications of transporting and sorting the material at the facility.
Okay. Well, what about metal hangers? Are they a good choice?
Metal hangers are really good for reuse in the sense that a lot of dry cleaners will accept them. So if you are already taking in clothing to be dry cleaned, you can bring in your hangers as well. And most dry cleaners use metal hangers, so they'll take them for reuse.
Okay. If I'm looking to add some clothes hangers to my home, I need some extra capacity. What are my best options?
I would rank it number one, metal, because you can also, I forgot to mention, recycle them as scrap metal if you go to a scrap metal recycling yard and actually get paid for the material. Number two would be wood, because they last a long time and they're going to have more value if you want to donate them. For instance, if you want to take them to a retail store, they probably accepted their branded hangers back. And number three would be the plastic hangers.
Okay, thanks. That makes a lot of sense. Well, next story we have is about burgers. There's a new innovation in meat called the blended burger. It's a mashup of real beef and mushroom that the James Beard Foundation, which worked on the product, is aiming to make delicious as a regular burger. The fast food chain Sonic has already introduced the signature Slinger made with blended beef in 3,500 of its restaurants. We have a story on it called Blended Burgers on our website. Mitch, I was wondering if I could ask you some questions about this.
Sure, fire away. I love burgers.
Good. So tell me, what are the benefits of a blended burger?
Well, there's several of them. The first off is that it lowers the amount of beef that's in the burger in the first place, and that reduces the amount of water used to make the dinner in the first place. A single pound of beef requires more than 1,800 gallons of water, or about 450 gallons for a quarter-pound burger, if you're doing the math. And so if you were to take 30% of the burger and replace it with the mushroom, the water for that one quarter-pounder falls by needed for that one quarter-pounder falls by 135 gallons. So there's a big difference in the water consumption. The other thing is that cattle have to eat a great deal of feed over the course of their lifetime in order to produce that pound of burger. So a blended burger, if you were, again, to take 30% of the burger and make it mushroom, would reduce the feed by 4.9 pounds. And that's a tremendous amount of fertilizer and other materials that aren't being used to damage the earth as well. So it's a great idea, and I understand they're great. I have not been to Sonic to try them yet, but it will help reduce the carbon load on the planet. It will reduce the demand on the beef industry, hopefully give them more leeway to treat the animals humanely. And it's a good dinner, so that's a good thing.
Sounds great. So do you think a company like McDonald's, which recently announced a project to lower its greenhouse gas emissions by 30% in 2030, do you think they would embrace the blended burger?
Well, McDonald's has certainly recognized the environmental impact of beef production, and they plan to address sustainable agricultural practices in this new initiative. But it remains to be seen just how far the company will go in doing that. Their focus has been on the packaging and other materials that are used to give you the food. Whether or not they're going to change and focus on the meat itself is a question that remains open.
Yeah, next up, let's talk a little bit about prescription pill bottles. These amber-colored pill containers have dominated the medical world for a generation, but they are difficult to recycle. Now, there is a way to be planet-friendly and help others in need. We did a story about pill bottles a couple of weeks back, and it's been shared all over Facebook and the web, so we wanted to revisit it on the podcast. Mitch, can you tell us about the Matthew 25 Ministries project to reuse pill bottles?
Well, there's several steps in this story. First off, pill bottles are ubiquitous, and they usually end up in the garbage, unfortunately. And they're made with a type of polypropylene, or plastic, known as number 5 plastic. There's a lot of different variations, but number 5 is not accepted by as many recyclers as other forms. We've talked about this as well before. Here in Tacoma, where I'm talking from, we do have a curbside program that accepts number 5 plastic, and we're fortunate to have a well-funded recycling program in the Northwest. But that isn't true everywhere else. Now, there's a great program called the Matthew 25 Ministries that takes in pill bottles and reuses them to give to people who are needy and are receiving essentially free medicines from the program. And you can send in your pill bottles. It's a mail-in program, and I'll tell you the address in a moment. But we want to remind you to take a few steps before you do that, both to help protect your privacy and to better facilitate the recycling. So before sending in the pill bottle to the recycler, be sure to strip the labels off. You want to take off the information that's on that bottle in the first place. You don't want that to be out in the public. So the best way to do this is to soak the bottle in boiling water and then rub the label off. And if there's some of the glue that sticks the label stuck to the pill bottle afterwards, it's a good thing to take that off as well in order to facilitate more recycling efficiency. And you can do that with a lemon essential oil. You just little you rub it on and it will just peel off. Now, as I said, Matthew 25 Ministries has taken this a different direction, and they're reusing rather than recycling. And this is a program that you mail in all the bottles and the lids. And in many cases, programs don't take the lids. And their address, Matthew 25 Ministries, is at 11060 Kenwood Road, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45242. You can check out the needs that the organization has on their site at m25m.org/ pill bottles, all one word.
Great. Well, my recollection is that they will provide these medicine bottles to countries that don't have this type of packaging, and it can be a great assistance to those who don't have this sort of thing.
That and people here in the States, I understand they're using them as well.
Oh, excellent. Wonderful. All right. Up next, we have a story about community solar. On our website, we have an article about what to do if you cannot get solar panels on your own roof. It's an idea called a community solar farm, and it can take on a couple of different forms. These are shared solar facilities where people who can't host their own solar panels can invest and share in sustainable power. More than half the United States have a community solar farm already. The Earth 911 story has community solar farms in the title, and you can find it online. Mitch, how do community solar farms work?
Well, solar gardens are a renewable energy plant that's owned by the community itself, the people who are living and in the community and using the electricity produced. And this arrangement allows a group of people who may be renters and don't have access to a roof to put something on to invest in and place these solar panels and then share the power that is produced by it. In many instances, the electricity from these community solar farms costs less than what residents and small businesses would otherwise pay for the electric company for their power.
Great. So there's a centralized location where the panels are installed. Do the members get power from the farm, or are they just putting their money to work locally?
Well, they can use the power that's generated, but they're not literally using the power generated by the solar farm. What happens is there's a technology in the electrical grid called virtual net metering, and basically it does a trade-off. It takes the power in from the solar cells and then delivers power and offsets the bill automatically. So it isn't like they're literally getting their solar power from the community farm, but they're getting the benefits of the solar power.
I see. So what would I need to do if I wanted to join a community solar farm?
Well, as you said, there's a couple of different ways to do this. Community solar farms are either ownership-based projects. These are an individual or an organization or a business takes a percentage of the solar farm to run it. And then prospective members join the project by buying or financing a certain number of panels in the solar installation. So you might say, put 3 in for me. If someone moves out of the utility district, they can then sell their interest in the solar farm to another member. So that's kind of like a stock. It's a security you could trade after you get done using it. The other option is what's called a subscription-based project, and these are actually not shared by the people who are investing in it. It's owned by a third party. In this case, the participants in the solar farm pay an administrator, it's often a utility company, for instance, to run the electrical system and then trade that, like I was explaining before, for the power that they're using at home. The third party receives all the tax credits that the individual would have gotten from the state, and that isn't true in every state, but many states now encourage solar with tax credits. All those pass to that third party. So the difference is that in the one case, the ownership-based is you're part of the ownership group of the solar panels. In the subscription-based model, you're essentially buying what's produced by the cells.
Okay. So I am not entirely sure I follow that. Does that mean I could use my local solar tax credits to participate?
Well, it means that in the case of the subscription-based model, that you are going to pass all of that over to the third party who runs the farm. And so if you've got $2,500 in credits, along with your investment, that would all be credited against your account. In the other case, it's a mixed model. It can go either way, where you are in or out of the ownership group, as I was saying. And in that case, the tax credit is variable.
Oh, very interesting. Well, that sounds great. I hope we see more of those. I think that could be a really positive development. That's it for our news segment, but we do have some very interesting questions. Every week, Earth911.com gets hundreds of email questions about what to do when recycling. Now, we pick out some of the most frequent questions to answer on the air. Be sure to submit your questions to feedback@earth911.com. Mitch, what's our first question?
Well, Ellie in Morris, New Jersey had an interesting question. She says, I work with a dentist who has about 15 boxes of unopened, expired toothpaste samples. And because he can't give them to the clients anymore because they're expired, he doesn't want them to go straight into the landfill and is looking for an option to recycle them. She wants to know whether or not these unopened items can be recycled properly.
Okay, well, I know Earth911.com has several articles related to this. Trey, you had some information about recycling and reuse options. What did you find out?
Well, first off, when Ellie is mentioning sending in unopened items for recycling, I would always encourage people that you definitely don't want to try to recycle something with material still in it. So if you have a sealed product, whether it's toothpaste or soda, you always want to empty out the contents because the material inside is definitely not going to be recycled. But the suggestion I would make in Ellie's situation is to see if there are any women's shelters in the area that accept reusable cosmetics and toiletries. They often will take those in order to give to women that are escaping abuse situations. And even if they are expired, it still is likely they will take them because it's more of a cosmetic date as opposed to you can't use it after this date.
Are there any mail-in programs that can be useful in this type of product recycling?
I'm unaware of any manufacturers that have created mail-in programs for the toothpaste tube specifically. It's a tough thing to recycle in curbside programs.
There is a TerraCycle program, though, isn't there?
If there is, I'm not aware of it.
Oh, okay. I was looking into this and I found the TerraCycle Oral Care Brigade. It's at TerraCycle.com. And in this case, Colgate and Tom's of Maine participate in this, which allows people to return their toothpaste tubes. And then that money generated from the tubes is used to build playgrounds. So it's a great program. And they've generated more than $63,000 in donations. And they'll take your toothpaste tubes and they'll offer free shipping for you to do it.
So I think that's really helpful information. And it sounds like, first, there may be some option to return the toothpaste to the particular toothpaste manufacturer. Second, if you're going to recycle them, Trey's outlined some really good ways of doing that. And third, there's also the possibility that there may be others in your community who might welcome that expired toothpaste, and women's shelters or other shelters or Salvation Army type groups would probably be a good place to start. So our next question is regarding water filters. David in Las Vegas asks, I have 2 eSpring water filters that contain mercury. I can't seem to find anyone in Las Vegas willing to accept them. Thanks. I've called your public services and the state recycling website. Mitch, any help for David in Las Vegas?
Well, Earth 911 has a comprehensive guide to recycling items that contain mercury, and that's an extremely toxic substance, so you want to treat it carefully. And in this case, David has the unusual recycling problem of having both the hard or the rigid plastic we were talking about before and this hazardous substance. So he needs to make sure that he's submitting this to a program that knows how to handle this kind of material. And I know Trey had some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I think the mercury specifically is in the ultraviolet lamp for these cartridges. And so it's a very similar situation to a fluorescent bulb that contains that mercury. There are plenty of mail-in programs throughout the United States that will accept any sorts of lamps that contain mercury. So that's an option for the mercury-containing product specifically.
So if you were searching on Earth 911, would you search for water filters and plastic, or would you search for ultraviolet lamps or mercury? What would you suggest to find those programs?
There's actually a material in the directory called items containing mercury, and that's what I would search for.
Fantastic. So, mercury itself can't be recycled, and it needs to be disposed of safely by the household hazardous waste facilities. In this case, David can identify the water filters as contaminated and pass them over. His best options in Nevada are at the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, and they'll connect him to the recycler of household hazardous waste. So they can call 702-486-2850 to get that information. So what's next?
Well, next up, Linda in Pittsburgh also asks a little bit about cartridges. Linda specifically would like to know, she says, I want to try to recycle these used cartridges, refrigerator and also under sink plastic water filter cartridges. Please help with an answer as to whether they can or cannot be recycled, where to do it, and how to do it.
Well, we recently published a spring household cleaning article, which is in our home and garden section on earth911.com. And it covered cleaning and replacing the filters, the water filters in refrigerators. There are several other kinds of filters around the kitchen that need annual cleaning or replacement, including the dishwasher filter, the cooking range hood filter, and even the filter in your coffee maker. So spring's a good time to do all this. But you don't necessarily have to replace these and therefore recycle these cartridges every year. You should follow the manufacturer's recommendations. Some refrigerators have lights that will indicate that it's time to change the filter. Most older ones will not, obviously. So keep track of this and replace it every 2 to 3 years generally to be safe, and make sure you clean it annually. And again, these filters are made of plastic number 5 and other rigid plastics, which means the Chinese Waste Import Act is what they call Beautiful China 2050, is going to prevent us from sending all this overseas. And like the medicine bottles we talked about earlier, you need to find a recycler who will handle those materials, and then you need to check with the manufacturer to find out what kind of plastic you're recycling. That's the several steps that I would take to prepare for the process.
So our last question is from Nathaniel in Oklahoma City. And Nathaniel asks, he says, I have a reusable food pouch made of 3 different types of plastic, PET, NY, and PE. I am getting conflicting information about how to recycle this product. 1, can it be recycled? 2, if so, where and how can I recycle it? Any guidance you can provide is appreciated.
Well, you get to the last question so fast these days. It's amazing how time passes. Well, Nathaniel can take a number of steps. And the first thing I want to point out is that Jenny Silverstone at momlovesbest.com has written about these pouches on a number of occasions. And Nathaniel should stop using these plastic pouches after about a dozen uses. A lot of people don't seem to be aware of that. They continue to use it, and that can be actually cause the plastic to start to break down into the food. The bad news is that these pouches are widely used and seldom recycled. Curbside programs generally don't take them because they're often combinations of materials rather than one kind of plastic. So the plastic and other materials like aluminum or paper or other things are layered together in such a way that they can't be separated very easily. And so the other problem is the caps that screw onto these plastic pouches are also made of number 5 plastic. So you have to be aware of this consistent theme. Look out for rigid plastic that we've been talking about all day. Each of the pouches, the manufacturers may or may not participate in different programs for recycling. So you should look for pouches that can be recycled and check with TerraCycle and Preserve Gimme 5. It's a program that Nathaniel can check out to see if they accept the pouch brands that he has. But for the most part, unfortunately, food pouches are just very hard to recycle.
Well, great. So that's about it for this week's program. These questions really are outstanding, and I think they give us an opportunity to really dive down into some interesting areas. So remember, ask questions and provide feedback by emailing feedback@earth911.com. We'd love to hear from you. That's it from this week's Earth 911 podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Evelyn. We'll see you next week.
Okay.